Welcome to AI for Growth, Lessons from Leaders. I'm your host, Megan Driscoll. AI for Growth is a podcast that demystifies AI for business owners. Each episode features conversations with leaders who share their experiences, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI implementation. We aim to help businesses understand how and where AI can effectively scale your operations, focusing on practical insights rather than just hype. Welcome. Noel, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to have you on the show, AI for Growth, Lessons from Leaders. I always start the show by asking to kind of introduce yourself, tell us about your company, and we'll get started that way.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, Megan. Looking forward to the conversation. So I'm Noel Wilson, CEO and founder of Intelligenic. At Intelligenic, we are building an AI-driven platform that automates the software development lifecycle comprehensively by providing enterprise context that we can offer to our agents. They will produce production-ready code with minimal iteration. We're effectively enabling vibe coding for the enterprise.
Cool. Super cool. So this podcast is kind of designed for small businesses, maybe medium-sized businesses who are like dabbling with, AI. So you're kind of like an AI expert. So when we talk about it, see if, we don't have to dummy it down, but, we want to keep it so that people can understand like a little bit about the technology in a way that they can access it. Essentially, that's kind of the hardest thing. We're trying to demystify AI a little bit. So specifically, can you tell me about, because I think this is kind of interesting. I want to hear like, how did you get into this? What was your origin story for wanting to do this kind of work? Like, how did you get involved?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been involved in software development throughout my career, even at a young age, growing up in Silicon Valley in the 70s and 80s. I'm dating myself a little, but it was always the path. And, throughout my career, I've been involved in building software solutions, leading teams of people that are building software solutions and ultimately being responsible for the business. All from a consulting perspective. I worked at Anderson Consulting, which became Accenture, and Avanade, and various different consulting firms and services organizations that are part of tech companies in the Bay Area as well. And throughout my experience, it became very clear to me that the workflow that I was responsible for and I was helping my customers with was highly inefficient. There's just, for a number of reasons. First and foremost, there's just never enough qualified people to be able to produce the software that we're being asked to build. Even with the introduction of artificial intelligence, we still can't really meet the demand of for all the software that we're trying to build. And when we were looking to build software, it ended up being highly manual, which resulted in long delivery timelines and lots of effort and lots of cost. And so with the introduction of these large language models that had the capability to produce code better than they ever had before, I realized there was an amazing opportunity to take advantage of it and build a business around that. And that's why I created Intelligenic. I've definitely got the experience around software development, so I know what works and what doesn't work so well and how to apply these amazing advancements that we have in artificial intelligence to improve upon that workflow. Now, with that said, I know during our conversation, we're going to talk a little bit more about other workflows that can benefit from artificial intelligence. And my perspective on that is that any workflow that requires a lot of human interaction in a repetitive fashion can benefit from the use of artificial intelligence. It just will make the people that are performing the work and the activities that much more productive. They'll just be able to do more with less time and spend less effort on it. So ultimately, it's going to be this amazing force multiplier for everybody. Beyond just the workflow that I'm focused on, which is software development, it could be, tax accounting, it could be mortgage rate analysis or mortgage brokering and that sort of thing. I mean, there's a whole litany of workflows that could benefit from the use of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about that on the show before too, which I think is super important. That it's you want to try to understand the workflow first before you try to solve the
Yeah.
problem. And I think that
Yeah.
there's so many different apps out there that can save you time that business owners are like, oh, I'll try this. Oh, I'll try that. And I think when you do it piecemeal like that and you end up getting frustrated, it doesn't really necessarily solve your problem, or you're solving the wrong problem. And
Yeah.
so we've advocated on the show, and I'll continue to advocate on the show, that really breaking down what it is you do, or what your company does, what your employees are doing on a regular basis for each kind of task, large task that we are, getting accomplished, whether it's like an operational issue or a sales issue, or it doesn't matter. It's like writing it down and really kind of thinking through the workflow, and then deciding what technology might help. Because I think if you do it the
Yep.
other way, I think it can get frustrating. I think that's where companies go awry a little bit too, is not
Oh,
uncovering like what they need first,
yeah, 100%. I spent most of my career as a consultant helping big enterprises with just that problem. It's so easy to say, oh yeah, well, you got this new technology, let's just use it, and just put it in
Yeah.
place, and great things happen. But it doesn't work that way.
No.
Most initiatives that try to do things like that, they fail. The number one reason that most like technology initiatives do not work out is because the stakeholders do not have alignment. And they try something, which is not a bad thing. I'm not advocating against trying it, but you need to do it with a plan. You need to understand what you're intending to accomplish. You need to understand really well whatever the process is that you're trying to apply it to, so that you can then take that tool, whether it's artificial intelligence or anything else for that matter, and improve upon that process. If you don't have a strong
Absolutely.
understanding of the process, it's not going to help you bringing in a tool.
Exactly.
If you don't understand the process, you're just going to further complicate that process by introducing a new tool that may or may not be benefiting you or really accomplishing what you think it might be accomplishing.
Yeah. 100%. And then also what you mentioned too is just this idea of like putting a parameters around things and measuring the
Yeah,
success as well. If you
yeah,
are going to implement something and you do it, then you do want to be able to evaluate its success over a period of time. I always say like give something 3 months, like, you don't really know how something's going to really work unless you look at it for 3 months, but don't get stuck on doing something for a year that just doesn't work. So I think also
yeah,
people miss that piece about like, we've implemented this technology. We're going to evaluate its success. We're going to basically come up with some idea as to how we think it should be. Like, what is the ROI? What should the ROI be? We may be surprised about it. It could do better or worse, but at least you kind of want to put some parameters on your expectations so that at the end of that period of time, whatever it be, 3 months or 6 months, you can look back and say, okay, this was actually really successful. And what I thought would happen did happen. Or you might be totally surprised, that it actually created additional issues for people and that they didn't like using it, or they loved it and now it led you to something else. One of the things that I do with companies, I really primarily focus on sort of sales AI implementation,
sure.
because all companies need more sales. It's sort of the thing that gets people excited. I think it's the thing that you can see the most ROI on quickly. And then it's a good entry point into AI. Other operational challenges is kind of do one thing first. So just don't try to solve all these problems. Just choose a problem that you really care about, that you really want to fix, and focus on that before you move on to other things, and then have it measurable. Let's make sure that we know what we're doing and we have the outcome that we
Yeah,
like. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're definitely thinking about it the right way. I always recommend that. That's really the beauty of what the artificial intelligence tools that exist today offer. The ability to quickly implement something so you could try it out. Whether that's a demo or a pilot. I think the big thing right now that everybody's talking about is, don't create PowerPoint presentations or, slide decks, create a demo and so that we can really see what you have in mind. And these tools are really good at enabling people to quickly get something like that in place so that you can try it and you can
yeah,
see whether there are potential benefits that might be able to come from
yeah. And I think too, the other problem that I see with people is that they don't have time for it.
that.
It is very time consuming to go and spend time doing it, and I think there's a huge, what I do, I love what I do because I get to kind of be the person in between the technology and the company. And you don't have to do the demo because I already did it. So I already know what works and doesn't work.
Yeah,
Um, or if there's new tech coming out saying, well, let's try this, I'll try it first and then we'll see. So I'm kind of like the guinea pig.
yeah,
But I think there's a real need for that. There's a real need for a go between, between AI and a company. One of the things I found fascinating is like kind of how poor the customer service is within AI. And most of it is because
Oh
you're
yeah,
talking to these new AI agents that are learning as they go, with regard to like how to handle things. But it is very hard to get somebody like real live on the phone to help you walk through an issue. And so, that's kind of again where there's an accountability issue with AI, and
sure.
that's kind of where I come in. But
Mhm.
so, do you use AI? Are you going to plan? I know. So, your company hasn't quite launched the software yet. Tell me about the stage that
Oh,
you're
it
at right
actually
now.
has. It has.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's live. We have the software market and people using it. We're adding more functionality and features every week. It's super exciting. Right now, it is available for people to utilize. Product Studio is the name of the product, to help our customers with their discovery activities. These are all the things you do when you're determining what type of software you should build, all the details that are associated with that. That helps you define the product requirements definition, the user flows, the actual flow that the individual will, the process that they would walk through in using the application itself. Um, Low fidelity wireframes. We create all of these various things that help you determine the what, the why, and how of the software that you're going to build, and we determine the features and the user stories that you should create. And then we go so far as to produce the actual user story tickets that you can then push to your product management tool like Jira or Microsoft DevOps, so that you can assign that work with all that detail about what should be built and have them start building software. The
So cool.
We call it's like a context engine, right?
Yeah.
Context is king when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And what we do really well with our product studio at Intelligenic is that we help our customers define that critical context about their organization and about the application that they're trying to build, the requirements, the designs, and everything that's needed for an engineer. Let's just set aside for a moment, the use of artificial intelligence, but an engineer to go build the actual software. But that also, all that information can be consumed by our agents to produce the actual code itself. So right now we've
Yeah.
got the discovery capability launched, and within a matter of weeks, we're planning to launch the code generation capability. So we'll have the discovery and all that context available, and then once our code generation is available for our customers, they'll be able to get the best of both worlds. They're going to get
Yeah.
amazing context that can be used by our agents to produce production ready code with minimal iterations. That's the big challenge that most organizations face right now when trying to use artificial intelligence. They just do not have a clear understanding of the context, or if they do, they don't provide it to the agents. And without that, the agents are just not really capable of producing anything of relevance or quality that's really going to align to what you expect. Remember what we talked about just a few moments ago, the reason that most technology initiatives fail is because there's a lack of alignment
Yeah.
between the stakeholders. And you get alignment by defining that context, sharing
Yep.
that with all the stakeholders and ensuring that they all use it. And that's what we do really well. We produce that
Yeah.
context, we provide it to our agents, and our agents then produce production ready code.
Cool. Does it give you it's what about cost?
Well, by virtue of doing that, it's going to significantly improve the individual's productivity.
Hmm.
We estimate that you can see, just to start, about a 50% increase in that, meaning that you're going to be able to complete your activities at least 50% faster than you ever would before, which allows you then to produce a commensurate amount of output. Whether that's all those discovery activities that I mentioned, creating a product requirements definition, or creating the actual user stories and getting it into Jira and that sort of thing, or actually creating the code. I think that's just scratching the surface. I frankly think that in the very near future, we're going to see a 10x return.
Mm.
There's definitely individuals that I've witnessed that have been able to get that, but most people struggle because they don't have that context. They don't really have a strong understanding of how to instruct the models to be able to produce what they want, and they don't know what's good. You have to
Yeah.
know what's being produced, whether that's quality or not.
Yeah.
So if you don't have
Right.
those three things, you're going to struggle to build quality software. You're going to struggle to get any of the benefits associated with that. Our platform helps teams of people building incredibly complex software to produce that software much more efficiently and with less time, effort, and less cost.
Yeah, cool. Tell me a little bit about some of the other AI like products that you've used. So not your product, but like what kind of AI did you use to start your company, to do your sales? Like give us an overview of some of those tools.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I'm a firm believer in content marketing. It's huge, and what I mean by that is, creating information related to your business, some sort of point of view, right? It could be, my perspective on artificial intelligence and how it will help organizations with their software development initiatives, right? It could be the risks of artificial intelligence associated with writing software, and privacy and so forth. There's all kinds of things that you can create as far as content goes that it's very interesting for people, creates relevance to your company, pulls people in to see what you're doing, and it ultimately gets them to try to use your product, right? That takes a lot of time and effort. A lot of time and effort. It is not trivial. And we try to do it on a regular basis, at least once a week, producing some sort of written content. To help us with that, we use LLMs. They're amazing at producing that. And I'm not saying I just take it, you know, verbatim. I go in and make it my own. That's important, by the way, with any artificial intelligence that I always talk to people about. You absolutely must have a human in the loop. You need to review what's being produced to make sure that it aligns with what you expected and has the quality that you're looking for as well. And so we do the same thing when it comes to producing the content that we use in our content marketing strategy. Um, it's
Did you
kind of
try anything
it,
else before that platform? Like did you try other tools first?
because we have access to these models for what we're doing, that's under the covers for what's within Product Studio. I rely a lot on what's available to me. So OpenAI is the partner that we're working with. Um, I have tried some of the others. Gemini's great because it's easy. It's right there in the browser. When I'm doing my quick analysis, like if I need to do some analysis of like an industry segment, or I need to get a question answered, like um, how long do you have to warm up your domains before you do any sort of automated email campaigns and stuff like that? I can ask that to Gemini and it'll immediately come back with these amazing response. And then the beauty of the way that Google has architected Gemini, it's built right into your browser. So you just simply just put it into your browser, whatever the prompt is, and then it'll begin this interaction with the agent. You can expand upon that and ask more of it and ask it to do certain things. So it's so prevalent. You can't get away with like not being exposed to it, even if you think that you've never touched AI. Like for example, my understanding is that Apple has it built into their iOS now. So if you've got an iPhone, you're using it on a daily
Yeah,
basis.
right.
But it's huge. It makes such a big difference. It makes me more productive. Like I have a very lean team. I have a total of 8 people, at Intelligenic, and we've been able to produce our product, get it to market, get people using it in a very short period of time. I wouldn't have been able to do that without the use of these AI tools for
Yeah.
many of these other activities that just are very time intensive and require a lot of human effort to get things accomplished.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about we didn't talk about I kind of like the idea that you're an 8-person company that you've just launched this product. Like tell me a little bit about the funding. So how did you
Yeah.
get started from a financial perspective?
Yeah, bootstrap to start, largely my own capital that I've provided. And then as we progressed, I was able to take in outside investment from angels.
Okay.
I always recommend that when you're taking that path to get funding to fund your company, if you're going to look for outsiders, you want to start with angels, especially early on. It's just really hard to find institutional venture capital firms that are willing to take the risk on an early stage company like ours has been.
Yeah,
They're
that's
out
very
there
true.
and it does happen, but it's very much an edge case. There's a lot of uh, very specific things that have to be in place for the venture capital firms to make that investment early on with entrepreneurs that haven't built a product yet or haven't taken the product to market and aren't generating revenue. So it can be challenging. So Angels are a little different. Their risk profile is a little different. They're willing to take a risk on people that are building companies at an earlier stage. So we fully embrace that. And then as we progressed and we developed more of the product, we made more traction. I was able to get institutional venture capital into the company. So, we were able to take that next step. Even though we were still very much, as I would define us, as pre-seed, we hadn't quite got the traction that we would be looking for. But we had an early customer, and it was a big one. It was the United States government in the
Yeah, great.
DoW and the Air Force, which was great. So that's a huge demonstration that we're on the right path, and we will be able to continue to develop the traction of our products. So all of those things help with our funding path. Now we're very much focused on our commercial release. Um, we've got a number of customers, and it grows every day. I think we're around 20 or 30 of them right now, which is great, but still early. But I want to get it to hundreds and thousands, and then get them to be generating revenue in a pretty consistent basis. When you do, that then positions your company for a much bigger raise. And so that's definitely in our plans. We're planning to make that happen, but right now we're just focused on continuing to develop that traction, get more customers using our product.
Yeah, two questions. So when do you suspect you'll be profitable? Like, what's your plan to be profitable time wise? And when
Yeah.
did you start?
We started in 2023. We, we've been working on it quite a bit over the last several years. We've also had some pivots here and there along the way, which is what happens with many startup organizations. As far as profitability goes, uh, I would say we definitely have the ability to be profitable within the next 1 to 2 years for sure.
Okay, great.
Maybe sooner. The more that we use artificial intelligence to help us to automate many tasks, it allows us to keep our costs low. Um, that's key, I think, with any organization. You just want to always be looking at ways that you can be more efficient at what you do and not have to spend your precious capital on things that maybe not necessary. For example, I firmly believe in a remote first strategy, which means I'm not spending any of our capital on real estate,
Right.
you know? And we can be very productive with people working around the country, around the world for that matter. We don't really need it, and so that's a significant savings. Now, if I were building an engine, for example, that's a different story. I need to actually have a physical facility, but we're writing software. So that allows us to take advantage of the possibility of not having real estate. And then we're always looking for ways to remain efficient. As much as we're building a platform that incorporates artificial intelligence into that software development lifecycle process. We drink our own champagne. We do that. We
Yeah.
use, LLMs to help us write our software. And it is a massive force multiplier. It allows us to build our product with a much smaller team than we ever could have imagined just 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So all those things together that definitely help with that. But if I didn't have to take capital, I wouldn't. And I always recommend that to people. Like, just really ask yourself whether you need it. So if you can get your company to the point where you're generating your own cash flow through revenue generation, right? Maybe you don't. But capital can come in handy if you want to accelerate that process ahead of that cash flow that you might have available to you. And that's the reason that we're deciding to go that route, because we do want to accelerate it so that we can build more product, meet our customer needs more efficiently, and gain more market share much more
Yeah.
swiftly than we would have, without it.
I think it's a hard decision for people to decide, like, how and when to spend their money. I think that's, as a
Yeah,
small business, that's a really tough. And I agree with you. I always say, if you can bootstrap it, as long as you can bootstrap it, you should.
yeah, yeah.
And even just going with a small business loan, right? Knowing that you have some cash that you could kind of get yourself over the hump, maybe. But I also think it's, I think it's a daunting task to think about getting investors, right? Like, it's a whole
It is.
other, like, now we have to kind of shine ourselves up like a little penny and, get a presentation together and make sure
Mhm.
we are being honest and clear about what the expectations are, and so I think it can be a little bit scary. The one thing I don't know actually, because I don't really do this in my business, but I kind of wonder whether or not,
Mhm.
now that we're talking about it, has AI infiltrated the angel investing? Has it made it sort of easier for companies to get in front of investors? Do you know anything about that?
You mean as far as like tools that are available
Yeah.
to find them and reach out? Well, yeah, I mean, I would say so. I mean, for all the reasons we talked about before, you gotta you got to create your messaging, you got to create your content, so it helps with content creation. That helps
Yeah.
accelerate that process. That's great. If you're trying to fine tune your message for a particular investor, which is very important, just like any other like sales activity, you want to fine tune your message for the individual that you're trying to sell your product to. It's the same thing with investors as well. They're helpful for that. They're helpful in analyzing the pool of investors. It's a finite pool, but actually getting larger and larger. There's more and more boutique institutional VCs than there ever have been, which is great. I love that because
Yeah.
there's just more capital available to entrepreneurs than there ever has been before. But it'll help with that.
Well,
There's
and for
lots of different ways that
listeners,
you can use it. Yeah,
for
go ahead. Sorry.
I was thinking like, one of the things that I think is so awesome about open AI, or even, I use ChatGPT, but I also use Claude as in sort of deep
Sure.
research. And, those are my two places I usually go. And um, I'm always prompting it to, and this is kind of an important piece to say, like, tell me the other side of this story. Like, don't just tell me what I want to hear.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me the
Right.
downsides to this. I want to hear the devil's advocate. And if you do ask that, you will get that back, because I do think it's helpful to not just kind of be in your own echo chamber about why this is so
Sure.
amazing. It's like, well, is it amazing?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think what you just mentioned too about sort of the research, with regard to investors, you get this opportunity to kind of, say to ChatGPT or OpenAI or Claude, this is what I'm thinking. Tell me all about this investor and what they've invested in the past. Go to their website and help me create a discussion for why this is important, right? Like, help
Yeah.
me why they would be interested in my company. But it
Right.
also goes back to, I think, and this is just true no matter what, it also goes back to the sort of original piece, which I've been talking to people about and trying to discuss, is this training your platform. Like, if you're going to use ChatGPT as an example, starting off with the origin story, right? Train ChatGPT on who you are and what you do, and you can actually ask it to create a document for you to fill out that then you can then put back in, so that ChatGPT has everything it needs to know about you in order to give you the advice that you need. So when you go in and ask these questions, tell me why XYZ investor would be interested in my company. You don't have to go through it all over again. They already know
Yeah.
it, already knows you. So I think that training piece is really important as well. And yeah, and so I think that that's kind of an interesting way of thinking about it. Or even going into, I have never gone into ChatGPT or anything and asked, for give me a list of angel investors that are interested in whatever what it is that I do. But I'm going to do that next. Actually, when we get off the phone, I'm going to do that and
Well, I
find
think it's a
everything.
good idea. I want to try that too because I've just got lists of people that I've been able to get, through contacts that I have and various other forms of research and just in meeting people. That's a great idea. I like that. To ask it and see
Yeah, listen,
like,
we're
what
both
would be
gonna
available. I know.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
both gonna learn something, and maybe that's not, I'm actually kind of
Right.
excited to try that out. Um, is there any sort of AI products that you've tried that you thought you were gonna love and turned out to not be successful? Is there anything that people should be thinking about when they're, maybe not tried, but just things that you've tried AI, problems you've tried to solve with it, and you just don't feel like AI is quite there yet?
Um, it really boils down to context, really. So what I would say is that um, the the models that are available now are better than they were just 6 months ago, right? So
Yeah.
there's a constant development, there's constant improvement. When I first started this, they were okay. I got some interesting things. Wasn't always so great, but what we're able to do from like a code production perspective is incredible. But it's really again only as good as the context that you provide to it. And so definitely the case for us when we're using it to produce software and produce all of the other work products that come along with the process, right? To further define that context, very key. You mentioned it just a moment ago about, training it to know about you, your organization, and how you can then produce some sort of output. Well, that's the context that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If you don't provide that, you're going to get what you would expect. It's going to be an answer that it's kind of close. It's trying its best, but it doesn't have enough information, right? It's like going to somebody that you're meeting off the street who's never met you and asking you where you live.
Right.
It's not going to be able
Right.
to answer that unless they like look and they see, oh, wait a minute, maybe I see that you've got your license plate says California, right? And maybe they like happen to see that you had this credit card that was, maybe from a bank that happens to be in California. It's like, oh, I'm going to kind of narrow it down from there. That's exactly the way the models work. It's just it looks at whatever information it has to define what that response is. So I guess what I would say to you in answer to your question would be that there really isn't bad artificial intelligence and bad models. Um, there's just bad prompts, and you need
Yeah.
to think about the prompt, what you're asking it, and the information that you're giving it to give it additional context. You'll be blown away at the difference in quality of that output that you get in return.
Yeah, so true. I mean, once your whatever platform you're using really gets to know you, I'm even like surprised with its answers. I'm like, oh, it's so thoughtful and
Yeah,
so accurate. And
right.
yeah, I just think that's like and I think too, like it's great for personal problems, I
Yeah,
mean, it really is. It's like a built-in therapist, like, hey, this
yeah,
situation's happening. And then it's being like, well, I know you told me like 6 months ago about the fact that, your son was having this issue before. This is actually related to that. And you're like, oh, it is
yep.
related to that,
No, I know it's
so
awesome. Well,
it
I've
is
used it
so
for, like
awesome.
HR questions that I have. It's like,
Yes.
as a CEO, I always joke what CEO really means is you're the chief everything officer. So, got to handle all these things. And if I have a question about, about how to handle a particular internal situation, it's great for that because it's got access to all of that, the legal information you need to know about employment and how you would handle certain situations. So
Yeah,
very
I
helpful.
actually think that I'm going to try to do an episode on specifically on AI for HR, because
Yeah.
I do think it's a hugely I mean, amazing. It's an amazing resource. When I was running my company, my company got to be 250 employees by the time that
Mm,
I stepped down as the CEO. We didn't have any. There was no AI, and the amount of times that I would be like, I just want a quick answer as to what to say
yeah.
in this situation,
Right.
and I would really have to call someone, and we, contracted to
Hmm.
a small HR company when we first started this, and they were available, but not immediately available. And so things would have to wait, and I would be paying for that. And now it's just like free advice available to you on site,
Yeah.
immediately. And with context, when you say, I live in, offices in Massachusetts, employees are, Massachusetts employees, whatever. And that's all you have to put in. And all of a sudden you get it's just, I mean, it is kind of quite extraordinary for human
Yeah.
resources. So I intend to do
Yeah.
an
For
entire
sure.
episode about that because I think that's going to be really cool.
I can't
Um,
wait to see it. That'll be great.
yeah, it's gonna be a good one. So thank you for coming today. I want to just make sure that people know, where to find you. So where can they find you?
Yes, please go to intelligenic.ai. So when you
Spell it
think
for
of,
us.
yes, when you think of intelligenic, think of intelligence and photogenic combined into one word. So INTELLIGENIC.ai.
Great.
I know I didn't make it easy on like I realize it now that it's really long URL, but I'm like, but the name I think says it all about what we're trying to do with our product. Please go check out the website. You're going to find out a lot of information about Intelligenic, about our perspective on artificial intelligence as it pertains to software development. And you can sign up to use our product right there from that website. We're offering a free trial right now. So it costs you nothing to check it out and
Go
see how
play.
you can build amazing context that you can use to feed to our agents to produce production ready code. And then if you love it, we'd love to have you stay for as long as you'd like, months, if not years, and try it and keep on trying and build all your software with it.
I love it. I love that. And Noel, are you on like LinkedIn? I'm sure they can find you there too. Your name is easier to find than your company name. Noel Wilson.
Yeah, definitely. Noel Wilson on LinkedIn. Definitely very active there. Intelligenic has a site on LinkedIn as well. And so
Great.
I'd love to have you check that out. You can get all kinds of information about my background and about the company and what we're trying to do.
Amazing. Well, it's been great having you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing all your knowledge with our listeners.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Megan.